Anna, thank you so much for taking some time to join me and let me ask you lots of questions.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
I want to just jump right into your situation. It's so unique and so fun, and it's on a bucket list, I know, for so many teachers to be able to travel and work remotely a little bit. So tell us, for those listening, especially, where are you right now, and what is your setup like for teaching music?
Well, we're in Central Florida. I have been the church organist and pianist at the same church for going on 31 years now. Actually, well, yeah, going on 31 years. So we have been staying since we moved into the RV full time in April of 2021. We've been staying in Central Florida because we want to be within an hour's drive of the church. As far as my teaching setup, really the equipment that I have in front of me that you can't see much of because that's intentional, is basically the same thing that I had in my house since I went online, at the end of March 2020, as most of us did.
Nice. And so tell us briefly what that setup consists of for your travel setup. I know it's the same as it was, but what is it that you're using to teach with?
Oh, sure. Well, I have a Yamaha CSP 150 keyboard, which is a digital keyboard, and I already had that. I had an older Yamaha that had died, and I love Yamahas, so I had replaced that. I have a 17-inch MacBook. I'm sorry, not my 17 is my wish. I have a 2017 13-inch MacBook Pro that I never thought I would be teaching off of. It was just going to be an extra office computer. I've got a 24-inch external monitor because I really wanted the MacBook to be in front of me, as you see. So it sits right behind where I would put music. You can see that I've got my iPad sitting in front of me, kind of out of camera view. So the external monitor lets me see other things. Um, since getting into the RV, I've bought other equipment, like I have an Elgato deck that enables me to connect the things I already mentioned, as well as my iPad and two webcams. And I've got a Blue Yeti mic that I use sometimes when I don't use this Audio Technica headset. And then it's all connected through a Scarlett audio interface, so that my students, I can, if you want me to play something on the
Sure,
piano.
yeah.
So my students get, a nice clear sound of my voice. I can hear them because living in a motorhome, when it rains, is really loud. The rain is really loud, and so sometimes I'll turn my microphone off so that the student is not distracted by it. But so that is the sound of my keyboard coming through my USB interface, through my Scarlett audio interface. And the reason I got all of that is because it's a small space. We've got about 300 square feet of space, and I live here with my husband, who also works an online job. His does not involve talking a whole lot. It's mostly online chat for a hospital system. Um, but knowing that some noise might leak through outside to people, and knowing that there'd be a lot of piano music going, the only thing he ever hears is the sound of my voice.
So that it's so cool. Thank you for sharing all of the tech and the gear because I'm just thinking there's a lot of teachers that are going to want to know how it all works together. And I think it can be empowering for them also to know whatever setup you have in a house, you can pretty much take with you online, or take with you remote. One of the bigger questions could be internet connection. What kind of internet have you found that works best for you as you are in different places?
That's every RVer's biggest question. There's a lot of online groups that I'm a part of on Facebook and every single one of them, there's 4 or 5 people a day that will say, "What's the best internet if you have to work online full time?" And the answer to that is, it depends. It depends on what you're doing, and certainly if you're doing Zoom, then you have to be really concerned with your up and download speeds. And I have to tell you, Carly, that because my MacBook is not, a super powered one, I am in the habit of running a disk clean program every day, and then I reboot but if I'm going to be doing a bunch of teaching, because I want to make sure I'm kind of starting with a clean slate. And then what I typically do is I check all the internet providers that we have. And if you could name them, and we have them right now. We have Verizon, we have T-Mobile, we have a couple of different AT&Ts, and we have Starlink. We got Starlink back in May, which has been working really well. I think the last time I checked, we were paying about $250 a month just for internet services.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but you never know. I mean, the location I'm in right now, we have been in a lot in the last 18 months, and some days one will work better than another. So today I came and I did my disk clean and I restarted my MacBook, and about 5 minutes before you and I were set to chat, I realized, oh my gosh, I haven't checked to see which internet is best today. So, because for some reason Starlink is not working that well, which is odd because this is the location we were in when we got Starlink, and it worked so well that we were even letting. I have some friends that are living out of a travel trailer next door while their townhome is being built. We were letting them use our internet. That's how well it was working.
Wow.
But AT&T works really well for me today. That was the first thing I looked at because it's been working this week. And online teachers may be shocked to hear that I have 12 down and 12 up,
Okay.
which when I was in a house, I would have thought, only 12 down? Because we're used to like triple digits down. And I see that sometimes. Um, but upload, if I get double digits for upload, I'm like doing a happy dance. And there have been a couple times this week that I had lessons that students said, oh yeah, you sound fine. The audio and video synced, everything's great. And my upload has been like 3.5.
I'm laughing because that's how it was when I was traveling and we were like in other countries and we'd get to a hotel and the first thing Mike and my husband and I would do was check the internet speed. And
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes we would get excited like, oh, we have 20, 20 up and 5 down or whatever. But I've taught in terrible internet speeds in different
Yeah.
places and sometimes had to reschedule, but not very often. Usually I could get away with at least 5 up and down. Could send a good feed. The challenging thing is when you're trying to, send videos back and forth to each other. That's when you need something a little bit faster, or when you're streaming with multi-camera views and stuff like that. It can be a little more challenging. But 12 up and down sounds like it's working great.
Yeah, that was, and I checked it right before we got on because I thought, okay, AT&T, that's been good. Otherwise, we have a T-Mobile 5G home internet that usually is stellar. Um, so when people ask me what should I get, I say start with T-Mobile 5G and Starlink. And I would just get those, and we're going to be my last day at the church. Our plans right now for my last day at the church is September 25th of this year, and we were all excited. My husband's job had approved him working out of the state of Florida, and then we realized that we're heading into winter, and we really don't want to be in a motorhome in snow. People do it, but this girl doesn't want to do that. Um, so, so
You
we're
might say.
probably going to be in Florida through March until threat of most of the snow is until we can go to some other states. But we'll be trying out internet in the Keys. I've booked us into the Florida Keys for 2 weeks over Thanksgiving. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I have heard people say that Starlink is working pretty well, so we'll see. I will tell you that I just this week got a smaller digital, well, like a keyboard I can carry around, like a 61 key keyboard. And I'm now working on being able to set up so that if I have to drive somewhere and teach in my
Yeah.
car, I can. So that's on my to-do list for this week because I have that. I would like a way that I can set up at least one webcam, and then I need to get a portable power station
Mm.
um, because I don't want to run everything off my car battery and then find that I can't get
Mm.
home. So that's, you have to think about power and water,
Hmm.
when you're in an RV. But I'll tell you, I've lived in Florida my entire life, and when hurricanes are headed our way, when I was living in a house, if I was always in Central Florida, so fortunately we never got hit really hard with but a couple of hurricanes. But there was always that question, how am I going to teach? And so that was what some of my earliest experiences with online teaching is, people still had power, and they still had internet, they still had their Wi-Fi because they still had power, but they didn't want to be out on the roads. So we would have online lessons.
Wow.
Well, now we have an onboard generator, so if the power goes out for whatever reason, I have my own power through a gas-powered generator. We also have it's called a Blue Yeti power station that we can recharge with solar panels. And I did actually teach earlier this year. Um, it's a very long story, but I ended up working from a church parking lot in South Florida for a whole day. And I could have run the generator, but it was nice out, so I opened the windows and I used this Blue Yeti. Everything that needed power was plugged into it. And we have a 100-gallon water tank, in the RV. And we have two full bathrooms, and all the other comforts
Everything
of
you
home.
need.
Anything you can name, I have around me.
Yeah, that's so great.
That was fun.
I I wanted to actually ask about, rewinding back 10 or 15 years. Did you ever see yourself teaching online remote? Like, was that ever even in your mind, or has it been, or kind of what did you think you'd end up doing, and how did you get into it?
Well, RVing is something my husband and I talked about before we got married, and we've been married almost 32 years. And whenever the topic would come up, I would always say, well, if we're going to be in there for any length of time, we're going to need a piano in there. And of course, digital pianos were a thing, but I hadn't really thought any further down the road about how to put one there. As far as online teaching, I know that I'd been online teaching. Trying to think when the earliest it was. I know I had a student who was in my area, but her mom was a nurse and was offered a year-long position in Spokane, so the other side of the country. She really wanted to continue her lessons with me, so we did, and we did it over Skype. And it was horrible because they had a horrible internet connection and it was Skype. So, but we did it, and you know what? She prepared a guild audition and she got really high marks. So that was my first inkling that you could actually teach and do a good job of teaching online. And I think that was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. Um, and fast forward to today, I just started that family lives in Louisiana now, and I just started her younger sister on lessons this week. The mom called me and said, hey,
Oh,
you know,
that's awesome.
I want to start my younger daughter on lessons. So rather than find a teacher, they had never found another teacher in Louisiana. So she wanted to go back with me. And it's so much better now with the options that we have now.
Yeah. And our students are so much more open to it because they've been through a pandemic and had to do it, and it's an easier solution than I think it's ever been. I wanted to ask, you've been in Teach Music Online for a few years now. What are some of the highlights of your journey going through the program, whether that's within the course itself, upgrades you've made to your business, or within our community?
Well, initially, and I joined Teach Music Online back in 2020, and initially it was because it was just such a comfort to know that other people were doing this, that they were doing it successfully, and just to see what kind of equipment other people were doing. And I loved your course at that time, which has come a long way, as you know, because it's your course. And I'm actually going back through it now. I started back at the beginning. I'm going through the whole course again now because there's so much information about every aspect of teaching. It's nice to have an overview of the different lesson platforms, the different video platforms, what their pluses and minuses are, um, different options for storing music digitally. That's really great. And equipment. It's nice, as I said before, it's nice seeing what other equipment people have. And just the camaraderie, just the sharing of ideas freely of people that are in that community has been uplifting as well as educational for me.
And you recently have kind of teamed up with another member to do some accountability calls as you go through the course. Can you share a little bit about that and how it's been helpful for you?
Yeah, this was actually something that I learned in I took an online course that was once a week for about 8 weeks. And the format of that course allowed us to have about 30 or 40 minutes every week to just work. Here's my cat. Um, so, um, so, and I had never done anything like that before. I'd heard of it, but I thought, well, you're just like working. Um, but it's that you commit to doing it at this particular time. You know, you put it on your calendar, and you know that there's somebody else that you're going to meet. So maybe you've done that with like an exercise partner or something. That's what gets you out the door to walk in the morning or something. But just knowing that you've promised this other person that you're going to be working online, and so we work about 45 minutes, and then well, our plan is to take like a 5 minute break. It usually lasts longer than that, but we unmute our mics, we turn our cameras back on so we can see each other, and if there's something that we had a question about in the course or something that we want to discuss, then we take a few minutes to do that. But it's been a lot of fun, and I just like being able to help other teachers that are kind of not as far down the road in this journey as I am.
It's been fun to see people hopping on there, and as you said, like everybody is at a different place, and it's also probably inspiring to them to see you and where you're at, and that you're still learning and you're still going back through and refreshing your ideas and maybe reorganizing and getting new ideas for your business. I think that's a great example to all of us. There's no like end to the road of learning how to be a successful entrepreneur or a business owner as you are, and it's exciting, it's fun, and to have community around that can be so helpful. So thanks for setting that example inside of our community. It's funny, my husband and I had been talking about that exact thing. Some people call it body doubling. Is that what it's called, Mike? Yeah. In other communities, I guess. And so we were laughing about that's kind of a funny term, but they use that as a way of, it's a work session with other people, and it can be really helpful to have that.
Yeah, we have really enjoyed it. And you know what I have found? I don't know why I'm surprised by this because, I've been teaching for about, well, almost 50 years because I started teaching when I was in high school as an apprentice teacher. And I know that when I was teaching in person, I was always learning new things. I don't know why it surprised me that there's still more things to learn about online teaching. I think a lot of people think, well, once you know what buttons to press, and once you know how to find students, what else is there? Well, there's a lot. And I'm still learning. I learn a little bit of something every day, which is exciting. I'm learning about that, learning about RV life. And when you stop learning, then that's when life starts to get kind of frustrating and boring, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's one of the most fun aspects for me inside Teach Music Online is I find myself curating really great tools and resources and passing them along. And I have always had such a love for technology and marketing and business, and it's an ever-changing world with online marketing. There's so many new tools and ways to be more efficient, to use our time wisely, to be smarter about finances, to set goals. I mean, the list goes on. And so it's been such a joy to bring that in, combine my worlds of teaching with this love for just the world of modern business and marketing, and help music teachers see that you don't have to do the traditional methods maybe that you were raised with, but that, like you said, when you can always learn, and it can always be very fulfilling.
Yeah, and I think that there are options that we haven't even realized are options yet, which I find very exciting. That there's something out there. There's a way of teaching that I haven't even thought of maybe, yet. I'm working right now on an asynchronous program that has just gotten off the ground in the last few weeks. I have four students signed on with that program, so I'm excited about that.
Yes, I love it. That's so good. I'm thinking from the shoes of a teacher who might want to be doing what you're doing, and I'm wondering if you could share what have been some challenges as you've transitioned from a home to an RV motorhome, and specifically with teaching, have there been any kind of unexpected challenges that you would, let teachers know about in advance?
Well, I would say that probably the main thing that you need to consider is if you want to be full-time in a motorhome or a towable, you have to be willing to get rid of stuff, and that is a very difficult thing for people to do. But it was one of the driving factors that caused my husband and I to choose this lifestyle. Um, and then we don't have a house now. We sold our house a number of years ago. We had been renting a fabulous house that was perfect for my group teaching. We had been in that house for 3 years, and we have two adult children. And we gave stuff away. We sold stuff. So getting rid of all that stuff, but then you don't have to take care of all that stuff. But you have to realize that whatever your teaching studio is in, if it encounters some kind of trouble and needs repairs, then they're going to be taking your house for repairs. So you have to be ready and willing to kind of go sideways with where are you going to teach then. And you encountered that, when you were traveling. Um, so there were things that we thought about, and it hasn't been that big of an issue while we've been in Central Florida because I could teach at my church, or I could teach. There are several people who have pianos that have offered their space to me. They are not themselves teachers, and so I just have to be prepared to gather up all my stuff, unplug it all, replug it back in, know what it is I need to have with me, and go teach somewhere else, and possibly live somewhere else. We just came back from Indiana, and where we had to get some warranty work done on the RV. And I had just planned not to teach that week, but we were there last year, and we ended up being there longer than we thought. Well, they only work until 3, so they gave me back the RV at 3 o'clock every day. And so I taught from the parking lot of the Rev Group Service Center for several days in July of 2021. So you have to be flexible, you have to be willing to get rid of stuff, you have to be willing to learn a lot of stuff that you have never considered having to know stuff about. But if you are um, married or have a partner, I will tell you that it's a great way to find a new love of things that you can do together because you have to.
Such great insight into that. I think I would add, from my experience with teaching, traveling and teaching, a couple of things could be helpful for teachers is perhaps having 1 or 2 days a week that you're not teaching at all for maybe repairs or travel. If maybe they're not in a home, but maybe they're traveling and working remote from hotels or Airbnbs a month at a time, which is a great solution, but you need travel days. So I know for me, I think I worked Monday through Wednesday, and then I didn't have any students on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And so I had a I was able to actually do the things we wanted to do while we were in these other countries and had more flexibility for being able to travel. And then I love what you said about flexibility. I would tell teachers that our students are actually very flexible as well. And I think sometimes it can feel like, oh no, I have to postpone lessons for today, or I have to reschedule, or there sometimes there's things that can feel like, as a teacher, you can feel guilt around. But what I found was parents and students were very accommodating. So it for some it could be a slightly different business model when you're traveling and teaching, where maybe you're teaching fewer but you're able to reschedule and have a little more flexibility. But just to think those things through, because it does look a little different than when you're stationary.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know of people that buy motorhomes or towables and they park them in an RV park and they stay where they are. Now it's not at all what we wanted to do. And I will also throw out that it's not necessarily less expensive than living in a home necessarily. Um, and that's a whole other story. But we move about every 3 weeks. And so it's like preparing for an earthquake every 3 weeks because you have to secure all your stuff. Um, and so it's planning around those travel days. So I don't teach until 3 on Mondays and Fridays. and I don't teach at all on Saturdays and Sundays. Now, I am, as I said, a church musician, but we're also having to work around my husband's schedule. And although I set my schedule, he does not set his schedule. And then you throw on top of that that most campgrounds you have to be out by 11, and then you can't get in until noon. So, and you can't like pull in at noon and be ready to go in like half an hour.
Right.
There's a lot of extra things that have to go into planning, when could I be ready to teach? And
Yeah.
so that is what kind of initiated that whole teaching from the church parking lot one day. We'd already
Yes.
done that a couple of times where we knew that he had to, my husband had to work at 8, and so there's no way we could like have a 2-hour break to pack up, move, and reset back up. So, but it's fun. It's an adventure, and that's how we choose to see it, and that's what we signed on for. That's what we wanted, and so I'm so much looking forward in next March to traveling. We're planning to go up the East Coast, and then probably next winter 2023, I want to maybe travel to Arizona. So many parts of this country that I've never seen, and we're just so excited to do that and still be able to teach.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. You mentioned something about downsizing and kind of having a more minimal lifestyle. What were some of your favorite parts of that or hardest parts of minimizing and getting rid of things? Because I went through that same process. I'm just curious how it was for you and your husband.
Well, we were somewhat fortunate in that we have two adult children, and one of them was engaged. The other one had just bought a house. So they both needed stuff. So we just went through the clipboard and said, "What do you want?" And we just wrote it down and said, "This is when you have to get rid of it." So when I visit either one of their homes, we still see some of our stuff because they have it. Clothes were really hard for me to get rid of. I mean, in our RV, my husband and I share a closet that is honestly like maybe 14 inches wide. And I have 3 drawers and he has 2 drawers. And that's all for clothes. Oh, and my shoes also have to fit in this closet that's like 14 inches wide. My daughter wears the same size shoes, so I still get to see some of my shoes on her feet. But my husband had a really good idea early on. He said, it's seeing the things that bring back the memories. So I just took tons of pictures of things. And now, the Time Hop app that drags out, from pictures from a year ago, I'll go, oh, I remember that picture, or I remember, you know, whatever, something that someone gave me. I think I had every greeting card my husband had ever sent me in our 31 years of marriage. I still had them. So I got to look at them all again, and I took pictures of them. And
It's so, yeah,
it
so
was
good.
wonderful to be able to bless people. Like we gave our washer and dryer away to a couple that help people who are coming out of homeless situations. And we were able to do a lot of things like that were just really blessings to us. So all around, it was just a wonderful experience, and I'm happy not to have all of it, really.
Yeah, I went through the same process with taking photos of things as we went through boxes of childhood, heirlooms or memories or certificates and things. And it's interesting, you hold on to stuff for so long because you don't have a need to get rid of it. You just put it in your basement or put it in a closet, and it's such a great exercise to, even if you're not going remote, to just purge, donate, and get rid of things. I found that it was just so helpful mentally to get rid of stuff. And really, for us in our marriage, we were had only been married for 3, maybe 4 years at that point, and doing that as a couple so early on was a great exercise and really set us up for hopefully not holding on to things always in the future.
Yeah, I had gone through downsizing with my 80-year-old mother 3 times in the last several years, and if you've ever had to do that, they don't want to get rid of anything. And I guess the older you are, the more memories you have, and so the more difficult it is to part with things. And it was, I think, compounded by the fact that we didn't want or need so many of her things. And so it was not only painful for her, but it was painful for my sisters and I to see her have to get rid of these things. To not know that someone was going to be appreciating them necessarily. And we didn't want to put our kids through that. You know, so it really didn't matter to me if there were things that neither one of my children wanted. We took them to Goodwill, or I found someone else that wanted them, or and that was fine. But I think it doesn't bother me as much because I have, 30 years less attachment to them, I suppose.
Before we end, I'd just love to hear what have been some of the biggest wins or joys to you in this transition as you've been able to still teach. Like those moments where you're like, I need to write that in my journal, or where you just feel so grateful for what you've created for you and your studio and for your life.
Oh gosh. Being being able to continue relationships with students that I've had for so many years. I had three seniors graduate last year that I had still been able to continue online lessons, still being able to have recitals from a teaching standpoint. From a personal standpoint, getting rid of stuff and freeing up my schedule because taking care of that huge house isn't there anymore. It gives me time to enjoy time for things that I just enjoy doing. So it's a much more, for the most part, it's a much more relaxed lifestyle for me because that's what my husband and I have chosen to make of it.
Well, thanks for sharing your experience and your wisdom. I can't wait to share this with teachers. I know there's so many that have these aspirations and dreams, and maybe it's way down the road for them, but hearing that you have made it happen and you've taken those steps that are not easy and not comfortable and can be nerve-wracking to make a big change like that in your studio is so inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. It has been my pleasure, and I hope I can be encouraging to somebody that wants to do this.